Hi, my name's Kyle Passarelli, and I'm going to show you something I've been playing around with over the last few weeks, cross-rendering a terminal user interface to the web. So what is a terminal user interface, or TUI? It's essentially an interactive command line application. I've loaded one here on the left, and I can move the cursor around. I can select items, add a to-do list, and so on. So these interfaces have a lot of nice properties. They're easy to code. This is the example from the Charm.clj repository. And it's only about 170 lines of code. They are fast and easy to use. And in general, they allow us to focus on the business logic of what we're trying to achieve instead of getting bogged down with layouts and style sheets and kind of thinking in the DOM, which can hold us back. But they also come with some drawbacks. And the main one being, how do I publish this? How do I share it with the rest of the world? So this is a active area of interest. And there's a few approaches I'd like to point out. The first one is what I'm going to call the React approach. So, and by the way, even yesterday, I think on Clojurians Slack, I'm going to paste a link if I can down in the show notes. Tony K added terminal user interface support to fulcro. So here, a Babashka client is doing the job of the browser and using JLine for rendering. So this is a really interesting approach, and it's well worth keeping an eye on. And another approach is, I'll call it the Haxy approach. So here it has two parts. So the first one is delivering a terminal user interface as is over SSH. And here's an example that you can find on the web, terminal.shop. So when I run this SSH command, I would expect to see a terminal, like a command line prompt, but I won't see that. I will connect with my SSH key and I'll see some sort of application. So here the application itself is rendering server-side the content and delivering it to my terminal. So the terminal is a thin client, and the server is rendering, display frames and whatever ancient technology is drawing this on my screen. So you can log on and play around with this. So Zach I don't know his last name, but Zach, well known in the Clojure community, is making a Git server, so alternative to GitHub, that uses this approach, but then also adds a second rendering path, and that's like a cross-rendering to the web. I thought that this was really interesting. So to program on the website, the idea is you don't program kind of web-style code at all. You sort of pretend that you're targeting the terminal, but then it just kind of magically gets rendered to the web. There's a really great video about it that I'll post also on the show notes. So then what's left is that, okay, what sort of, how do I program it? So if I'm going to program a terminal user interface, what is a nice domain-specific language to do this in? So I'm going to show you a little bit of the code of what, in a second, of Charm.clj, which uses a kind of a nice programming model based on the Elm architecture. I remember kind of looking at Elm years ago, thinking it was just had nice ergonomics for kind of writing complex and usable user interfaces for the web without having to kind of go down the rabbit hole of all the kind of complexity that comes along with it. So what I've done is, here's the same to-dos example. This time I'm not running it, even though I'm starting it with Babashka, it's running on the JVM. It's the same to-do example, but you'll see it has a web link up at the top. So let's visit it. And there it is. It's a mirror of the TUI that allows me also to select and add items. I can use the mouse to add a to-do. And then make this a framework. Great. So the idea is to present something that might not look like that's reasonably okay for the web, that I can deliver to a lot of people. And but while I'm programming this, I will sort of pretend I'm writing a terminal user interface. And if you look at the code, on the left-hand side here is the Charm example. And on the right-hand side, I have a sort of almost line-for-line copy, except that it's using a unified core and a unified runtime to sort of render this over on the web. So you can see the code is pretty much the same. You have an init, update, and view function on both sides. And I'll jump to the end here, because one of the few differences is that in the view function, I have a little bit of layout going on. So instead of using string concatenation to build my user interface, I'm using some kind of helper functions. And this is kind of a prototype, but the idea is that these rendering functions have kind of depend on the runtime and have two presentations, one for the terminal and another one for the web. So that's what I've been playing around with. Hyperlith is a framework by Anders Murphy that's making this possible. There's at least 3 kind of different projects. There's Hyper, and also Jacob O'Brien with BIF is doing some stuff with Datastar. So I think it's kind of a natural fit for this kind of use case, because you're doing all the rendering on the server side. The SSH access, what I'm thinking of doing this is keeping SSH access and doing it a little bit like the coffee shop example. So have users, if you have an SSH client and you want to SSH in here, yeah, by all means do it. Agents, by the way, they can, if a terminal user interface is simple enough, they can easily navigate it. So it's also great for building apps with LLMs with less code. And whenever you give an agent something that it can try, it like quality goes up 10x. So that's definitely kind of a thought going into this. This might not be a beautiful interface, but it's easy to code, easy for agents to code, and it should look nice enough. Doesn't have to look like this black screen over here. I would like to have native drop downs, native controls, so that everything that you can do here with a cursor, maybe even use the mouse on both of them. The mouse, like Zach points out in his video, you can use the mouse in TUIs as well if the framework supports it. So I don't see why not. But yeah, the idea would be maybe instead of a black screen, you can have, I don't know, a sort of office looking like a light theme and a dark theme, toggle through them. Something fun, but that's could also be friendly for internal business apps, wizards. It doesn't have to be that complicated for me to be able to get work done with it. So I wanted to share that. Hopefully it's interesting. Let me know your thoughts. There's a few things I'm going to paste down in the notes. Thanks.